Social Studies, page 172. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Strengths are things you do well, and weaknesses are things that you could improve. What are your strengths and weaknesses? There's a box in your book. Go ahead and fill that in. Ready for war? Patriot soldiers, now called the Continental Army, were eager to fight, but at first they were no match for the British Army. Many British military leaders believed the war would end quickly. Instead, it would last 8 years. The British had not counted on the American strengths, and they didn't recognize their own weaknesses. The British didn't understand that the Patriots were willing to suffer a great deal to gain their freedom. Many Americans gave everything they had to win their independence. We're going to use the information on the next page, on page 173, to fill in that chart. The chart that's in your book is really small, so we're going to do a doc. So let's read first, and then just be aware that you need to pay attention to what are strengths and weaknesses, because you're going to need those in a minute. The British Army, strengths and weaknesses. For the Army, soldiers and military supplies had to be shipped all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. The British had as many as 60,000 soldiers in the American colonies. This included many mercenaries, professional soldiers from other countries. Most were Hessians from Germany. So do you think that's a strength or a weakness? It's actually both. The strength is that they had 60,000 soldiers and that they were professionals. That meant that they were trained and that was their job, that they'd been taught how to be a soldier. The weakness part is the fact that they had to ship them all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. They had to come a great deal. It's not very fast to get here all the way from England or from Germany. It took a long time. Training. British soldiers were well-trained fighters who joined the army for life. Soldiers were only trained to fight in open battlefields. Is that a strength or a weakness? It's actually both. The strength part is that they're well-trained. They've been taught, they were organized, they had information that they could use to help them have a good battle. But the weakness is soldiers were only trained to fight in open battlefields. They were taught that battle should be this one way, and everybody gets lined up, and it was an open field, and you could see who was coming and be prepared to attack. But they didn't have a strategy that could handle how the Americans were fighting. Equipment. Each soldier carried a gun called a musket tip that had a sharp blade or bayonet on the front. Uniforms included red coats, which made soldiers easy targets. Again, it's both a strength and a weakness. The fact that everybody had a gun with a bayonet, it's kind of like having a gun and a sword. They were well equipped. They also had uniforms, which were nice, to keep them warm and to protect them. But their uniforms were red coated. And they had those red jackets. And if you had a red jacket, you could find them easily. And it made it easier to find them and shoot them. Support. Many British soldiers were helped by loyalists. Many British citizens didn't support the war because it raised the taxes. So they had support in the colonies from the loyalists. But as far as the people in England, they didn't think the war was a very good idea because it was going to raise their taxes. Here they were going to have to pay for another war. Okay, I kind of helped you through the British Army and helped you figure out what were the strengths and the weaknesses, and there was one in each section. I'm going to read the American Army section to you, but I'm going to let you help figure out what were your strengths and weaknesses there. American Army, the Patriots, strengths and weaknesses. The Army. The Patriots fought to protect their homes, families, and a new nation. General Washington never had more than 19,000 soldiers at any time during the war. Training. Soldiers signed up for 6 months. This was not enough time to train to fight using traditional military techniques. Some patriots attacked by surprise, firing from well-protected spots. Equipment. Many patriot soldiers used long rifles, which were more accurate than muskets. A lack of uniforms, especially shoes, was a constant problem. Support. Patriot citizens supported the army by making musket balls or blankets. Farmers gave food to soldiers. Some Americans hid supplies or sold food to the army at high prices. Okay, that's page 173. We're going to read 174 and then we're going to be done with our book this morning. Supporting the war effort. My name is Martha. You probably know my husband, General George Washington of the Continental Army. These are turbulent times for us all. We are all divided by our ideas and the war. Though I don't fight in battle, I do what I can to support our brave soldiers. I gather supplies such as clothing, food, and blankets for the troops. Read below to see the way others at home support the fight for independence. Fun fact. Women had already played an important role in the events leading up to the war. Groups called Daughters of Liberty gathered to spin cloth during the boycotts. This allowed Americans to keep the boycotts going. Support at home. American women supported the war in many ways. When the men left for war, some women became carpenters, blacksmiths, or shipbuilders. Others took over family farms or businesses. Some women gave hope to Americans through writing. Mercy Otis Warren recorded the events of the Revolution. This helped everyone know what was happening. Phyllis Wheatley, a free African American, wrote poetry which inspired many people. Other women, like Abigail Adams, greatly influenced the work of their husbands. Abigail and her husband, John Adams, discussed issues being debated by the Continental Congress. She asked her husband to remember women's rights as the Congress planned the new government. Okay, I'm going to pause right there, and we'll get back to this tomorrow.